Ladies and gentlemen, best damn nation. This is your boy, Mr. Everything. I'm sorry. That's not my name anymore. This is your boy, Roosevelt, the man who likes to fight. And I'm solo dolo, holding it down for the best damn crew because everybody got something going on. You know, Brian doing the daddy thing. LP's probably putting together some things, some gigs. He be putting together some thingamajigs, some gimmicks, some gadgets for his next show. And of course, Chef Showtime. Showtime is out there cooking up the best meals ever cross against your palate. And today, it's just me. I'm hosting the show. I'm going to talk about a couple of things. But right now, I got a special guest on the phone via telephone with me today. His name is Byron Wickline. He is the owner of Xtreme Fight Promotions out of North Carolina. He's going to talk to us today about his background, everything. Let me tell you, I met this man, it had been 8 years now, Byron? 9 years?
Yeah, it's been a minute, brother.
It's been a minute. It's before my son was born. So it had been at least 12 years. Yeah, 13 years.
I think it is 11 years right now.
Yeah. I met Byron through a mutual friend, our friend Doug Coltrane, who's out there getting busy and competing for all kinds of championships at Bare Knuckle Fighting Championships. If you guys get a chance, check him out. Bare Knuckle Fighting Championship is a extension of the UFC. And Doug Coltrane is out there getting busy. He's knocking dudes out, and he's out there competing for titles. That's what we do around here. We champions around here. And I met Byron through Doug and went out there and learned a couple things through him with the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. And today we're going to chop it up today. So Byron, what's up, man? How you feeling today?
Not too bad, brother. Not too bad. Just happy, having some fun. Figured I'd catch you out a little bit and chat a little bit. I got to watch your podcast last time, and it was entertaining. It's fun. It's like real too, you know. You guys are talking some real facts over there, so I enjoyed it.
Absolutely, man. We all about the realness. All we do is real around here. Brian, LP, and Chef Showtime. But right now, we're going to talk about you. So give the people a little rundown about your background, how you got Xtreme Fight Promotion started, and actually how you got started into the combat industry.
All right. Wow, that's a good one. All right. So, it all started when I was 4. No, I'm just kidding. But honestly, I think, I grew up in a rough neighborhood. So, we were roughneck kids, poor, played rough. A lot of fights, school fights. It's something I was good at, So I think the first claim to fame I ever had was, schoolyard fights. But, those aren't good for nobody. I wouldn't tell anyone to go start doing that. Nowadays, people just stab you and shoot you anyways. I come from that generation where if you got jumped, people jumped in and helped you because it was wrong. I don't know what happened to this world, but that honor and integrity in the old streets, buddy, it's gone down to craziness nowadays. But I came to North Carolina for a wedding. My cousin Ashley was getting married to her now husband, and there were some underground fights downtown. And, MMA wasn't legal yet, so we doing some stuff at a nightclub, and I met some guys that were coming down all beat up, and they told me what they were doing. I went down and checked it out. I was like, oh, man, this is great. I'll work. They asked me to train them, so I did, and, every Thursday night we'd go down to the Rocks in Wilmington, and we'd just fight anyone that was there. We really didn't have a lot of organization. Like MMA today, you have opponents, you have time to train, all that stuff. Back then, it was just like, come get some, who's next? And we'd just step in there and fight. So we did that. We started in a church. My uncle had a church. And, I had these guys. They'd come train in the basement of the church. My uncle let me use the basement. And slowly but surely over a couple years, I think it was about a year and a half, 2 years, we were just huge. Like, people kept coming. We kept winning. People noticed that. A lot of people were kind of awkward about the fact that we were a church. A lot of people gunning to put us, out of the game because it didn't seem tough enough for them. It didn't seem like these church people should be coming up here knocking out all these, supposed to be street badasses. But, hey, that's how it went down. The videos are online. But after a while, I had a huge team, and the next thing you know, we took over. There was a guy named Paul Pawnee. Paul owned the Rocks Club, and, he didn't like me at first. I didn't like him at first. Enough blood gets shed, enough fights go on, enough controversy, and, Paul came to me and said, one thing, I don't have to like you, but we make money. So it started there, and the next thing I somehow took over. Like, we had the first helped get MMA legalized in North Carolina. CFP was the other company, Doug Mule and some other boys, and there was a lot of riffraff. And eventually, after the legalization had started, the commission came to the nightclub, threatened to arrest me, put you in jail, and you'll never be in a fight again, or you can go legal and we'll help you. So there's a long story to that, but ultimately, they had guns and badges, so I complied. Next thing you know, we're professional, and we were one of the first MMA companies ever, and we're kind of going strong now. We've grown since then, gotten a lot bigger. Got to meet a ton of people, do a lot of shows, a bunch of different cities, and that's pretty much it. I mean, we're after COVID came, we were on a hot streak, just continuously constant and growing, pumping out stars. We've had some guys come out of our company, like Derek Brunson fought for us back in the day before he was one of the top 10 middleweights, in the world. Doug Coltrane, he's been with XFP forever. Travis Holloman got started with us up in Raleigh. Some real big names down here. If you're into the fight game, you'll know who those people are. And it just became a thing that we did, and it kind of really formed a brotherhood of people that were, it's a dirty business, and to a degree. I know you understand that because of wrestling. Right? Wrestling isn't exactly a whistle clean business at all.
Absolutely.
But the fight game's very dangerous. You get lied to by the wrong promoter, and you get your face smashed in, and your whole life is altered. So a lot of these people, they're putting their faith on the line. So you try to get people you trust, people you believe in. That's who you surround yourself with, because if you don't, you're just another statistic. Some promoter's going to get you in there and have some ticket seller that makes him a bunch of money. He's going to lie about the guy's record, and you're going to go in there and get wasted in front of your family and friends, and that's a bad thing. But over the last, I think 8 to 10 years, it's become much better. I think all the scumbags have been ejected. Whether it would be the fighters getting rid of them themselves, rising up against them, like, dude, here's what you said, here's the messages, you lied, you scumbag. And a lot of these promoters, they've never fought a day in their life. They just had some money, and they wanted to look cool, So they go out, start an MMA company, and think they had it lit. I think one of the things that really helped me grow, first I'll say this, I think God has been way better to me than I deserve. And I'm just going to straight down the middle. I feel like everything we did without him, it wouldn't have been nothing. And I can't tell you how many fighters that came to our place to train genuinely found the Lord. I've watched God work in blood, spit, and guts more than I've seen him work in a whole bunch of churches. It's crazy. And some of these fighters, that you see this video of this guy smashing someone's face out and screaming and raging at the camera and, kicking and elbowing, but these guys were some of the funniest, kindest, nice-hearted guys. And for me, it was a family. I really grew. My first team was a team we called Team Elite, and we just tore up everyone, competed with everybody until ultimately the ones that shouldn't be in the business, this business worked itself out. A lot like wrestling. If you're a crooked promoter in wrestling, it don't take long before the wrestlers come for your ass, right? You know what I'm talking about.
Yes, absolutely.
And you're not going to last long, So the same thing with this business, but it's been a long run. I think we've been all together, 17 years, or wait, no. Somewhere around 15 years. I don't even know. I'm not trying to count everything all together, but we've been doing this a long time, and it's awesome. But when COVID came, it took a shit on everybody's life, It's kind of hard to fight 6 feet apart. It's even harder to train, and you can't have a show if you can only put a couple people in the room. So the only people that really functioned well was, the UFC. I mean, look what Dana did. He went out and bought a damn island.
Yeah.
If I had money to buy an island, I would have did it, but I didn't. So we all stepped back, and recently they've allowed fights again. So we've been wrestling with the venues and trying to get the right setup. We're about to launch, 4 or 5 fight series again. I know Doug is going to. If you all don't know who Doug Coltrane is, check him out. He's awesome. He's fought for me. He was my amateur champion. Worked his way into being pro, became a professional champion. Really carried the weight of a lot of my shows. Doug brought a lot of people. He just turned into a superstar real quick, especially in Johnston County. I mean, it's like feels like the only place I felt that I realized it is the same as when I was in Wisconsin. Mm-hmm. Everybody worshipped the Packers, and it kind of feels like that when you're out here in Johnston County. There's nobody not supporting Doug, but he went to the bare knuckle boxing place. And he's number 2 in the world, I think, right now. He's on a big stage, fighting heavy opponents. And Doug was just, an OG gangster, grew up in the streets. Again, I've seen his life change. He went from where a lot of people find themselves, unfortunate situations, and through a lot of blood, sweat, and tears, that boy turned his whole life around. I mean, I look at it now, and I remember I've had people come up to me, sponsors, and say, Byron, what happened? I knew that kid when he was young. We helped him out when he was a kid. He was always struggling, and he was just a wild man. We thought for sure he was going to go to jail. And now Doug is coaching basketball teams, football teams, and he's giving speeches to people about staying off of drugs and staying, doing the right thing. So for me, I've seen so many stories in MMA where a guy comes in a horrible scenario, mm-hmm. and they come out inspiring people that there's a way to do the right thing. Now, what bothers me about MMA today is once a ton of money gets involved, money corrupts people, right? So, I mean, you get into the Conor McGregor days, and, now they're all beating on their chest, who's the man, acting like they're the best, little ego trips, and now you got promoters that want you to sell a fight, so people are playing characters almost. But I knew a long time ago, I said, if I can mix professional fighting, the real deal, mm-hmm. with professional wrestling, I will have the greatest show on earth. Mm-hmm. Now, I am a professional wrestling nerd, okay? And I mean that with all the respect of, we can always square up if you think nerds are weak, but I'm not that nerd, right? But the idea is I loved it. I mean, I can't tell you how many fighters grew up. And I see it all the time. People are quoting famous wrestlers, there's always someone doing the Ric Flair woo. There's always someone, doing the Macho Man and, the Hulkamania. Let me tell you something, brother. It's always going on in the locker room. And there's this stigma out there that MMA and wrestling have this weird disdain for each other, but it doesn't. And, CM Punk needed to keep his ass at home. That's what should have happened, okay? That's what should have happened. And I still, Vic, would love to set up a Victor Andrews versus CM Punk fight. I will put that on tomorrow. Call him, get him out here, because, bro, that's easy work. Now, Brock Lesnar came and held it down. Bobby Lashley held it down. Mm-hmm. We play a different game. It's hard. And for any of you guys out there, check this out. We didn't really go over a script of what we're going to say, but I'm going to pretend my phone's a microphone here, because it is. And I'm going to tell you guys a couple stories that I think are good. You go with that, Vic?
Yeah, go ahead. Go for it.
Well, okay, so check this out. For any of you guys watching the podcast that don't know Victor, which I'm pretty sure you do.
Well, hold on 1 second. Hold on 1 second. So those who don't know, my wrestling name used to be Victor Andrews, and he's always known me as Victor Andrews. So if you hear him say Vic or Victor, he's talking about me, guys. But go ahead, Byron.
Yeah, Vic's been Vic to me for like 10 years. It's going to be hard to change that. So Vic is my man here, right? So Vic actually fights his ass off. Not a lot of people know that. Vic's so damn humble. It's amazing. I've worked with a lot of wrestlers, and I'm not going to throw around a bunch of names. I'm sure you guys would recognize some of them. But I've done a lot of work with professional wrestlers, and some of them are like business-minded people. They understand the game. They understand what they're doing. They have a vision, a dream for their career. They're trying to lay out a specific character, a specific path, and they're building a fan base. But then there's those guys that are really, really egotistical, and they drink their own Kool-Aid way too much. And I've seen a handful of them. Now, I'll tell you an interesting thing. So we play MMA. That's what we do. I'm going to say play. So if I refer to the sandbox, I'm just talking about the sport in general. But we play in this sandbox called MMA. That's where we put you to sleep, we break you, we ruin you. Mm-hmm. You can quit, but if you don't, then we're going to beat you until you can't move no more. That's the name of the game. You know, Joe Rogan made a comment of, we play murder each other. Yes. You know, that's what a tap out is. A tap out means you accepted that you're going to die if you don't tap out. That's why you always see it when some guy's got a rear naked choke and the guy's purple and he's about to go. If that guy didn't let go, you're dead. Yeah. So you tap out and then you try to kill each other again. You know, it's controlled violence, calculated violence, and it's become an amazing sport. Wrestling, you know, you have your kayfabe days and you have all the stuff where, you know, you got I remember back in the day where Van Vader was grabbing the dude by his tie, you know, and the Undertaker's sitting there in this interview. I don't remember what the show was, but I remember when I was a kid, they're telling the Undertaker, and he says something about it being fake. And the Undertaker, you know, he's staying in character. He's the dead man, so you didn't even get even a reaction. His face just stayed cold as death. Mm-hmm. But Vader got up and snatched that boy up and started going to his ass. And you know, and then they're suing him and everything else. And so I think what the disdain myth is this. When people pretend that there's not a scripted, choreographed thing in wrestling, then they're lying to you. But what wrestling actually is it's controlled violence. It's mm-hmm. calculated violence. And I've had so many fighters that want to do wrestling. And I've had tons of people that were pro wrestlers that came into fighting. We had a guy named Kenny Hill. He's got 14, 15 fights. He's a real deal. He's a tough little dude. He's a short, stocky, very well built, you know, looks like a little muscle-bound black dude. And he went by the name Suntan Superman. Mm-hmm. And he was awesome. That dude fought for me a bunch. The guy brings the show every time, win, lose, or draw. I mean, you got to kill him, you know, to put him down. And he's hilarious. He's a stand-up comedian. And I think in this conversation, I'd like to lead it into what I'm getting ready to do and actually include you in, Vic, and what we were talking about. But I reached out to a bunch of guys that were fighters, and I said, hey, man, because everyone's always like, why don't you get some wrestling, Byron? Dude, you ever do wrestling, you tell me. I'm in. So I reached out to a bunch of fighters, and they are down. What's so funny is all of them are fans. We all grew up on that shit. All of us. You're going to run into that tough guy. I don't like that fake bullshit. Just don't listen to him. He's an idiot. He's got an ego problem. He don't know how to have a good time. He's the same guy that can't watch a movie without running his mouth every 10 seconds, and you got to watch it again when he's not around, you know? Right. You find those people. But I know what you guys go through, man. I've seen it. And in all fairness, when Vic trained with us for a while. And for any of you guys that don't know, Vic got some hands, son. He had some Golden Glove boxing under his belt. Never talks about it. And you know, when I first met Victor, I met him through Doug Coltrane. Doug's the real deal. If Doug brings someone to me and says, hey, yo, Byron, this guy's it. He's got what it takes. I'm coming. I want to see it because I believe him. He doesn't give credibility to people that don't deserve it. It's kind of like the wrestlers that don't want to give praise to people that haven't been in the business and earned their spot. So, you know, we get to testing Vic. And we were cool. You know, we're very nice. But, you know, we heard this guy can box. And I found out that Victor was also boxing with my younger brother, Jake Wickline. And my younger brother is just a Wolverine with gloves. He is a savage when it comes to throwing hands. One of the best matches I've ever seen in striking, and I've got all 3 rounds on my computer. I'm going to release them in the future with the show we're doing, but was my brother Jake with Doug Coltrane. They went to it in my gym, and it was something special, buddy. It was damn on a stick. It was good. But Vic has really good hands. And I don't mean good hands like he can. This dude will cut angles and hit you. He's got a good guard. He parries. He flips. He throws power punches. He's methodical. He thinks when he steps. And if for anybody that doesn't know me, I don't compliment people. You put a shiny title belt that you earned at my company around your waist, and then you defend it from all the piranhas that are coming for you 3 or 4 times, then we'll start talking about you're the man. That's one of the reasons, I promote Doug. I have thrown Doug in fire after fire after fire. And this dude just stands there on fire and gets it done. Comes back and says, thank you, sir, may I have another? That dude is a hardcore dude. And Vic, you know what I'm talking about.
Absolutely.
Doug. I'm not overselling a product here, right?
Absolutely. Doug is one of those guys, when you get in the ring, you can stand outside the ring with him, have any kind of conversation, laugh and joke, and kiki and ha all day. But if you got to get in the ring, you got to fight him, it's a whole different mentality. Like his switch is so quick, and it's like the Incredible Hulk. It's like the Incredible Hulk. The scene on Avengers when it's like, hey Banner, this might be the time where you want to get angry, and he said, that's my secret. I'm always angry. That's Doug. That's Doug. Doug is that guy that's like, he's always angry, but you'll never tell until you get in that ring with him or you get him in a situation where you got to turn it up. So Doug is that guy.
And don't get it twisted. He doesn't have a problem controlling himself. It's not like he's a loose cannon.
Right.
Doug is I've watched people run their mouth at him and he just walks past it. It don't bother him. There's no ego on Doug. But when the door shuts on that cage, it's a different world. Doug said it to me one time. I said, you go in there, and if you watch Doug's fights, I encourage everyone to go watch Doug Coltrane's fights. Doug's the only fighter I've ever known, ever, except for maybe Mayhem Miller. But Doug comes to the ring like a freaking 12-year-old going on a carnival ride for his birthday, right? Like, who's got my lollipop? He's just so damn happy. People come out for entrances in wrestling, they look hard as shit, right? Same thing with fights. They come out and they're all focused, and which, look, I get that. I was never the laugh my ass off on the way to a fight. I was always focused, zoned in, and like, all right, well, I could die today, That's where your mind is going. But Doug comes in happy, like, I made it. Yeah. Hi, everybody. Dude, he's such a nice guy. Super loving, compassionate dude. He always wanted to help people at the gym. Anytime someone was struggling, Doug would go help them. Anytime someone had, issues, Doug helped them. Doug was with me for a long time. But, when you get to where Doug is, you train everywhere. And my advice to anyone that's at that high level, go train with everyone you can find that's the real deal. Because you're going to find something different at those places. If you find the same stuff, good, practice the same stuff, but don't waste yourself. It used to be this thing like karate dojo wars where if you were with Mr. Miyagi, right? Like you have Miyagi-Do and Cobra Kai, right? Like
right.
If you went to Cobra Kai on a Saturday because Miyagi-Do wasn't right, the whole gym would hate you for it. Like, what are you doing? That's not us. You're supposed to be loyal. It don't work like that anymore. It can't work that way. That's how people get wrecked. Most schools that are independent, they bring in 20 or 30 people to teach, and they keep it real. There's no one-man Superman out there. But so I don't jump too far off track, Vic. I want to talk about the Pete fight. Can I do that?
Yeah, go ahead.
I think it's a great story for the podcast because of what it does. So we have a guy, we're just going to call him Pete, okay? That actually is his name, but if he's watching this, I don't want him to get his feelings hurt, so I'm not going to put his last name out there. But Pete's a fighter, and he's pretty good. I mean, he has some backgrounds. He does some Muay Thai. He's the real deal. He gets crazy, and he'll go in there to the cage. He's fought for me a few times. He's a good fighter. He's not the best in the world yet, but he's young. But, right around Vic's age. So Victor comes to me and tells me, hey, Byron, I'm thinking about getting some fight going on. And I'm like, and so what did I do? I said, well, let's put some heat on you. Let's see how you do, Vic. I like you. I don't want to see you get all repped up, bro. I'm very strict on who fights for me. You don't have guys that shouldn't be in there.
Right.
My guys bring you fights that you remember. You have some companies, I'm not going to say names, but there was a show recently, and for a lot, where they had 10, 12 fights, and like 11 of them ended in 45 seconds in the first round. And there's a difference between people that are setting up fighters to win and someone that's trying to create a martial arts spectacle of the flow of violence, right? So I've always tried to find that flow of violence. And anyone who's fought for me will tell you, you can get in the door. Even getting in the door is tough because there's no real punks to fight here. There's no guys that get a chocolate cake because they sell tickets. Now, ticket sales does have a lot to do with it. I mean, you know, in a business when tickets are what bring the money in, aside from merchandise and sponsors, but I mean, I handle the sponsors. If you're fighting and you're selling tickets, you're making me money. If you're not selling tickets, why am I paying you? I don't understand.
Right.
Like, I don't get that math. Does that make sense, Vic?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, I don't understand that. I never did. Now, I do know that there's a huge value to people with what they do. So there are some guys that bring good shows. And when I have, so I've got a couple top sellers, right? So I think, you know, Derek Brunson, obviously, I can't afford him. He fought for us in Wilmington at the Schwartz Center, damn near murdered the people we fought with. He needed to go to the UFC immediately. He ended up signing up for the Ultimate Fighter. And he was going to do that, but then Chris Lieben made his return to the ring, like this long-awaited return. If you know Chris Lieben, they call him the Crippler. He is a knockout zombie. The dude is one of the stand-and-bang legends. He will stand with you and throw punches until his whole face is missing, and he'll keep coming at you. So it was hard to find a replacement when that fight dropped out. But Derek, he's just got 3 testicles. This dude's got balls of steel, never stepped down from a challenge I've ever seen. And even when we were booking fights for him, we're like, he's like, I don't care, just tell me who it is. I'm like, okay, no problem. You know, but he went in and knocked Chris Lieben all over the ring and just totally ruined the image of this amazing badass. So that was Derek fast-tracking his career, you know? He rolled the dice, he stepped up, he took the challenge, and he knocked the legend out of the park. And, you know, since then, I mean, he's fought Anderson Silva. I mean, the guy's been in the top 10 middleweight division for years and years and years and years. Derek's the real deal. The reason I mention him is he was, you know, such a genuine guy. He's got a gym down in Wilmington called Brunson MMA.
Yes, it's in the mall. It's in the mall, Independence Mall.
What's that?
It's in Independence Mall.
It's in the mall. It's beautiful, man. He's got a nice setup, man. Really, really nice. And Dre Hurd and some of the other guys, they've got a great team. They're very good, valued people. You know, I mean, Derek has always been a believer in God, never afraid to admit it. And, you know, even before he was a star, you know, he was talking to people like, hey, get out of the streets, get off, don't start doing drugs, you're going to hurt yourself. If you want to do some excitement, if you want adventure, come see me. So he was always giving back to the community. And when I left Wilmington, because I live up by Raleigh now, you know, I had a huge team, and we had done so much there for years. A lot of people were like, well, what are we going to do now? And I talked to Derek, and he said he was going to start a company. And I said, he's like, you know, can I use your cage? I was like, absolutely, I'll help. So I helped Derek get started in the very beginning. Don't get it twisted. They put all their own work in. These guys, you know, I didn't spoon feed nobody, but I did help them set up a card, him and Dre Hurd. But, you know, those guys are built for this business. They should be in the business. And, you know, same thing with a couple other companies I helped get started. But the story I want to go into, so I can not keep jumping off path here, is we had a fighter named Pete, and Pete talked a lot of shit. And he was challenging people and this and that and another. And Vic wanted to fight. So I went to Vic. I said, hey, man, I got this guy named Pete. You know, he's the muscle. He's a military dude. You know, he's tough as nails. And, you know, you got to kill him to put him down. He's got a hell of a chin on him. You know, and I've seen you guys both fight. And, you know, it's going to be a great fight.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and look, man, everybody thinks it could have gone either way. But, you know, that's what fights are, right?
Right.
So Pete agrees to the fight, and so does Vic. So we even got promos cut, right? I put up this thing. What happens when a WWE wrestler, because at this time Vic was doing some NXT stuff, right?
Yep.
And I was going to utilize that shit, Vic. I was going to run that fame you got and earned all the way to the bank, right? Because, I mean, why not? You were just coming off of this NXT stuff, so legitimately, you know, you're at this WWE doing some cool shit. I said, what happens when a wrestler meets a fighter? So they cut these promos, and Vic cut me one of the best promos I've ever seen. And he had me hooked from the moment I was like, man, make me some wrestling type promo. He's like, I got you beat. 2 days later, he sends me this thing. I watched it like 85 times. It was the coolest. He went up to a cage outside, just started describing the cage. Dude, this shit was so good. And so then I showed it to Pete, and Pete jumped on down at the beach while he's running in the sand, and he's screaming at the camera, this is my time. You shouldn't be in the business, Vic. I'm going to send you back to wrestling. So all of a sudden, I was like, I got it. Perfect. Here's the war, right? We've got it. We've got both sides of the fans that are going to root for someone based on whatever they like. And so I'm reeling this fish in, Vic, right? I got you both on the hook. I'm like, yeah, let's start killing each other, right? But, you know, I'm friends with you. I'm friends with him. So very professional, you know. But I knew when they got in the ring, it would be explosive. And then all of a sudden, after... Yeah, you can't tell this story, Vic. It has to be me, okay? You're not allowed because it doesn't go with your character. But it was so funny because, you know, Pete's pretty popular on Facebook, so he's blasting how he's going to wreck him and ruin him and, you know, how you're going to come in here and think you have a right to get in the cage and all you've done is bounce off the ropes. I mean, saying some insulting shit to Vic. And again, he's hyping the fight up. Vic, totally professional. You know, I called Vic up when I seen some message, and I said, hey, yo, listen, just whatever happens, finish it in the ring. Don't bump into each other and start talking about Facebook comments. And Vic said, Byron, I've been in this game a minute, all right? He goes, ain't nothing that guy's going to say. He goes, good, sell more tickets. I was instantly like, all right, you got this. So now we get up to where the fight's coming. We're not far away, guys. We're about to have Pete versus Vic live on pay-per-view, right?
Uh-huh.
All of a sudden, I get a phone call from this Pete guy, and he goes, yo, hey, man, I can't take that fight, bro. I'm like, wait, what happened? Are you hurt? No, I'm not hurt. Did you get injured? No, I'm not hurt. Who died? Well, no one died. Are you in jail? No, I just can't take that fight. Okay, Pete, tell me why. Yo, that dude's crazy. That dude's crazy. I'm like, no, he's not. I know Vic very well. I said, I've trained him. You've been down. I've worked with you. You guys will give me a good fight. He's like, yeah, no, man. Like, I'm watching his stuff. Like, I don't want that shit. I'm like, Pete, I thought you were going to be a champion. I thought you're the man. I'm just bringing in some wrestler. Vic's never fought in a cage before. You know, come on, do this. So, Vic's, all right, let me call you back. Next day, I get a bunch of text messages, you know, like these long reasons why he can't take the fight. And so I text him back and I said, don't be scared, homie. Now, for anyone that doesn't know what that is, that's a Nick and Nate Diaz line that they used when they were trying to get people to take fights that were ducking them. And I said, don't be scared, homie. And he's like, no, it ain't like that. I just have this, I have that. And all of a sudden, Pete just withdrew from the business.
Mm-hmm.
I've seen this a couple times, but not like this. Like, I've seen people that were fighting for, like Conor Mcgregor, when he got mashed by Khabib, he disappeared. And, you know, everyone's going to blame his kick, you know, his foot and his leg, which I think there's a lot of merit to that. I'm not trying to be critical of Conor here, but you know, he wasn't pushing for a rematch real hard, you know? He was just staying on the back burner. And now that Khabib's running from the law in Russia, he's got all kinds of stuff to say. Now he's coming back to fight. So I've seen it happen where fighters get scared away by the boogeyman, right? We'll just call it the boogeyman.
Baba Yaga.
Scared the shit out of this guy. Go ahead.
The Baba Yaga.
Yeah, the Baba Yaga, exactly. So then I think this guy's saving point in time. You realize he's not going to be able to fight on this card because of you, Pete. And he's like, yeah, but man, I didn't know he, I'm like, what, you didn't know he could fight? Like, what are you thinking? Like, so what are you saying? That I'm going to send you some guy that can't fight and you're going to maim him in the ring and make fun of him and call him a wrestler? And, like, why would I do that? It's never happened in my company, Vic, ever.
Right.
I've seen guys, a lot of guys come to my company undefeated and get wrecked, because we got real talent and we've had good fights, wars that people watch that really, get the crowd going. We're always sold out. So, people like our fight. But, so then, Vic calls me. He says, Byron, Pete asked me if he could wrestle. I said, wait, what? Wait, what? I said, seriously? And I thought Vic was messing with me. You remember that call?
Yes.
Like, dude, you're messing with me. I didn't believe him at all.
Yes.
I'm like, there ain't no way this guy called you and wants to do wrestling after all the shit he said about wrestling, right? Because at this time, he served you a go screw yourself platter, you know what I mean?
Uh-huh.
And just tried to taunt you for wrestling. So Vic, being the humble, nice guy that he is, which I'll be honest, if this would have been most anybody I know, the other fighter that got stood up like a fat prom date with no ride home, they would be pissed because a lot of time goes into training. A lot of time goes into your diet, making weight, preparing a game plan. You can't switch opponents at the last minute and expect someone to work at their highest capacity because, if you're going up against a wrestler is one thing, you're going up against a Muay Thai guy is different, you're going up against a jiu-jitsu/boxer, a Sambo expert. I mean, you have to really take time to prepare a game plan. And with Vic coming in the door, I'm not just going to slap some dude on a table, and say, hey, Vic, deal with that shit. So Vic was real cool, and he said, look, man, he wants to wrestle, he can wrestle. I think Vic realized what was going on. So then, oh my gosh, this gets better. So then he goes to work with Victor. Victor has a wrestling show, and he invites this guy down, and he brings his girlfriend, and his girlfriend's always pumping him up, go get him, baby, that kind of stuff.
Uh-huh.
And he wrestles with Vic. This guy straight up put on a gi with a headband, Daniel. Like this was before Cobra Kai was cool again.
Yes. He looked like he looked like
Kai kicked some ass again. This dude looked like a generic ass,
Ryu from Street Fighter or something.
Am I wrong? Am I stretching this out at all, Vic?
No, not at all. Not at all. He looked like
He tells him, he's like, look, man, we're just gonna go 5 minutes. Now and just on a side note, before the match went on, Pete hit me up and I talked to Pete. He's like, I'm going to do some wrestling. Go excited. I'm like, okay, that's cool. I said, look, man, that's a different animal, right? He goes, yeah, it's just wrestling. I was like, dude, just shut up and listen to me for a minute, please. Don't act like you didn't just duck a fight from just a wrestler, right? Like, just quit selling me the tough guy shit and listen to what I'm telling you. You'll look worse in there.
Uh-huh.
If you're getting in a fight and Vic comes over and just busts your face in and you fall down and take a nap, we're down with that. But you can't go in there and look like sloppy shit for 15, 20 minutes and not ruin everyone's show.
Right.
Does that make sense what I'm saying? Like,
right, absolutely.
Yeah.
So real quick.
Right,
so real quick, a quick rundown. So the name of the company was PWF. It's run by Steve Corino. And I talked to Steve, and Steve knew that I did all this stuff, the boxing and MMA. And I said, hey, I was supposed to have this fight. The guy backed out of the fight for whatever reason, so the show's not happening. But I still want to be able to have something with this guy. I want to bring him in. We do a little exhibition, and somewhere in the exhibition we'll have. I was in this feud with my former tag partner and these other guys, and I said we'll have them come out and jump on us in the middle of our fight, and then we'll turn it into a tag match, a wrestling tag match. So Steve Corino was down for it. He was like, yo. Never had it before. He had boxing up there. I was the one that brought boxing to PWF, and then I brought the MMA to PWF. And
right.
Pete shows up to the building, and he looks at me, and he immediately says, "You're not 5'7". And I looked at him, and I said, "No, I'm not 5'7". I'm like 6 foot." He was like, "Damn, how much do you weigh?" And at the time, I was like 160. I was small then. I was like 160. He was like, so you're not 140? I said, no, I'm not one. I've never been 140 since I was high school.
Neither was he.
And yeah.
Saving face, man.
So I guess he really thought he was going in for a really easy fight. And we get in the locker room and
you warned him too, man. You told him, because he told me, he's like, we were going to do 5 minutes, and I was like, I'm talking to him, I'm like, dude, have you ever done 5 minutes with Vic? Like, Vic's like a pinball. You ever play pinball? You know, that ball's going ding, 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 ding. That's 5 minutes of that, dude. Like, you better go run some miles.
Yeah.
It's a different kind of cardio. Like, Vic, you know this.
Yes.
You could run 10 miles. If I get you on the ground and grab a hold of you, you'll be out of breath in 45 seconds if you don't know what you're doing.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely.
It's a different cardio. Now, I know guys that I can choke cold out with no problem, 10 out of 10 times. But I don't think I could catch their ass if they took off running, right? Like, it's just not going to happen.
Right.
It's a different level of cardio for wrestlers and for strikers. And wrestling really does create an amazing cardio. Like, the first thing I seen in Vic was he came to my gym and started working with my boys. And I told my guys, like, he's wanting to fight soon, give him a little push. And they're pushing him, and Vic pushes back. And they push him harder. Vic pushes back. All of a sudden, it's getting heated, but totally respectfully heated. But I'm like, holy shit, this is entertaining. Like, all right, yeah, you can fight, Vic. You got the juice, brother. You got it. And then, you start doing jiu-jitsu with us. People used to ask me if the wrestler guy was coming in. Not because they wanted to see a wrestler guy, because they knew that you were going to throw them 4-piece combos and they were going to get to play against a guy that has some good skills that was nice and not going to take their head off, right?
Right.
So you were instantly loved by everybody. And what really got you in with us, like our group, is you were just so damn humble. Now like I said, I'm not going to put names out there, but I've had some pretty big names come through the door, and even in the wrestling world, I've had some really good names come through the door, and they find out real quick that they're not as tough as they thought they were. Now, sometimes you get a dude that is just way tougher than anyone thought he was, and you're like, yo, you got juice in you, brother. You got an animal you can let loose in a cage, and it might do good if you sharpen your blades and get your shit on point. I mean, you move and fight like a fighter, but you were so humble, and any damage that you took, like when you get hit, which at first wasn't very much, I had to pair Vic up with people that were at a high level. And Coltrane, Coltrane. This dude, he's coming by, and every time you do something like hit a good uppercut or go into a clinch and then throw like a 3-piece, and I'd look over and Coltrane be giving me that nod like, I told you what that is right now, Byron. Who knows their shit, Byron? So it was very easy that you were valuable in a training sense. But the way you were so humble and always willing to help people, never tooted your own horn. I was waiting for you, Vic, to become an arrogant asshole. I was waiting. I'm like, just give him a couple weeks. It'll turn into a piece of shit. They all do, right? And no, just super nice, and everybody was in on it. But when Pete pulled out of that fight, it's heartbreaking. And, I had a couple people come up like, man, I know Doug was pissed. Doug wanted to see you get your fight in. You know what I mean? He was mad. He was on Facebook telling Pete, like, hey, yo, man, why don't you just take the fight? Just do it, man. Vic's not going to kill you. So all of a sudden you got him running, and then he gets that wrestling chance. And, dude, I got to be honest, man, like, it was so bad. It was like he was trying to be like a legitimate high-level martial artist, and it just wasn't. He was super stiff. It looked horrible, and Vic cut him a break because he's like, look, we're just going to do 5 minutes. And Pete was being honest, because Pete is somewhat, Pete's a really good guy. I'm not making Pete out to be an asshole here. I don't want that to be, the takeaway from his conversation.
Right.
Pete's a good dude.
Right. He is.
If you haven't ever had a cage fight, okay, if you've never stepped in there with a guy that trains to break people, give me a call, right? We've got some beginner slots open. We've got some contracts. But a lot of nerves get the best of people. And I think Pete realized if he walked in there after everything he said and loses to a guy that Pete said shouldn't be in there, he's just a wrestler, he don't have the skills required, and then he went in and got knocked out, it would have really looked bad for him. You know, it would have made him look like he got knocked out by a shitty wrestler that can't fight. But if anyone watching the fight would have knew in a few seconds, Vic's not that shitty wrestler. Just for saying Blackzilla on your ass and just start busting you in the face. And so Vic's real nice, and he says, you know, we're going to do 5 minutes. He goes, I'm not going to make it. And boy, he was not an understatement. So Vic said, all right, look, we'll do 3 minutes. That turned into 2 minutes, right?
Yes.
2 minutes.
Yes.
And Victor said, here's what we're going to do. We're going to go out there. We're going to go back and forth for a moment. And right when it gets good, we're going to get jumped. Or, you know, you had some boys come out and jump you guys. And then you and Pete aligned to do the finish. And, you know, like people that were doing battle that were forced to become partners, and they overcame the adversaries and became friends. Great idea, right?
Right.
The storyline was beautiful. But it was so bad looking. Like, you carried him so bad that he never fought again. Like
he did. Well, he did
videos, and Vic sends me the videos because, you know, Vic, if you do anything, send me a video, right? Like, that's a demand. I want everything you do, and I always have, and I got everything you've done pretty much. But I'm like, look, let me know what happens. And you know, Pete was proud of it, and you can hear his girlfriend in the crowd, go get him, Pete! You know, it's just so entertaining. But you know, it was so bad that I was like, oh, dude, that's cringy. You know, like real cringe-worthy. But again, here's Victor carrying some guy that wasted his time for months, bailed out in a fight, and then carries him in a wrestling match so he can feel good and be a good, you know, have something cool in his life to be proud of.
Yes.
So I think that, you know, I learned a lot about you in that scenario, right? Like, nobody does that, dude. Once a guy bails on a fight, people are like, yo, pussy, come get some. And they will just, it's going to become a thing, right? Like, people are going to call you out. If I'm not fighting next month and I can't get an opponent, I might as well get some juice in on the internet and tell people how I feel, you know? Because these are people's careers, and there's a lot of hype that goes into it. So, you know, that's the standard. You know, you don't run from fights in MMA. It don't go good. Right? It doesn't go well. You're either there to fight or you're not. Now, if you're arrogant and you want to run around and tell everyone you're the best, well, I mean, we'll test that theory. We'll see how good you are. But if you're humble and you're not running around bragging and tooting your own horn, then when you sit down with a promoter or you go to do a fight, you know, and you're honest, I'll be able to match you up with someone accordingly. Because, you know, I can have two guys that aren't even that good at fighting. But if they're both tough and committed, and they're in equal level, we will have 3 rounds of Mortal Kombat, right?
Right.
We've seen it a bunch of times. So one of my gifts and talents, I thought, was matching up well-matched fights. I'm known for it. People have said, you know, Byron's got some awesome fights. He knows how to put them together. I've set up all my cards, and I've helped other promoters get fights on their cards when people fall out or when they don't have enough fighters. But it was amazing to see Pete talk all that shit, and then in comes this quiet wrestler, you know, just a wrestler, right? In comes Vic and just carries him through I don't even know how to tell the rest of the story. It was just one of them things where if you were there and you've seen it happen, it was ridiculous. And listen, this is just before Vic gets called out afterwards by some wrestler, some other wrestler, like, you know, again, wrestlers, wants to fight Victor in the wrestling ring. You remember what I'm talking about?
Yes. It was the Pancrase fight that I had with one Kyler Misery. His name was Kyler Misery. He decided that, and it was random. Like I put up a post in that year, right at the end of that year, and I said something about me being able to do some stuff and getting into a boxing match and getting into an MMA match, and the guy decided to comment on my status and said, "You and I are going to have an MMA fight." And I said, "If you really want that to happen, you really want that."
He was being an asshole about it. He wasn't being nice. I remember him being like a prick. And then Vic calls me and says, "Hey man, this guy wants to fight. Can we do it?" And I said, "Well, you know, we got to get blood tests. A lot of stuff goes into becoming a fighter. You don't just run out and start fighting. And I'm like, I don't know, man. We're not having enough show so by the time I'm like, look, I'll try to set it up. Let me see what I can do. I mean, like the next day, I'm seeing Vic online, and this guy's just being kind of an asshole. So he decides he wants to fight Vic unsanctioned in the wrestling ring at the next wrestling event.
Uh-huh.
So I'm do you want to say anything before I tell this?
His plan did not work. He had a plan in all this. He had a plan. And he came and told me after the fact when he woke up. When he woke up and he came to the locker room, he said he had a plan. I asked him what his plan was. And here's the thing. Like Byron said, I don't really broadcast my background. I don't really go around saying, yeah, I can fight, I can do this, I can do that. I don't really broadcast that. So Maizeri's thought, since he had been training in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu at some gym somewhere, that he just knew, first of all, he knew he couldn't stand toe-to-toe with me because he knew about my boxing background. That's always out in public. Like there's no hiding, no secret about that.
He's supposed to have had some hands, and I guess it was true. He had some fight experience.
Right. And he said he knew he couldn't stand toe-to-toe with me in a boxing situation, but if he grabbed me, he could take me down and tap me out. He had no idea I had a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu background and some catch wrestling. So he walked into it thinking, all right, all I need to do is wait for him to miss a punch, grab him, and put him in a submission, and that's it.
For people that don't know what he's about to explain, they can't do closed fist. Anything that has a closed fist in North Carolina is ruled by the Boxing Commission. MMA,
right.
Closed fist combat, boxing, closed fist combat. But so what they did is something called pancrase. Boss Rutten was real famous for it. It's basically MMA. I mean, it's the same thing, but you can't use a closed fist. You have to use palm strikes. But a lot of people don't realize that those palm strikes are just as dangerous, if not worse, than getting hit with a fist if you really know how to do it. There's some strikes, with an open palm that'll mess you up. Don't get it twisted now. We're not hyping it up. There's this old, legendary rumor, when someone says, my hands are a licensed weapon, they're legally a weapon, but I have to get them certified and registered. Anyone that tells you that is full of shit. It's not real. It doesn't exist. It never did, and hopefully it never does. And second, there's another rumor that if you take your palm and you hit someone in the nose at just the right angle, it'll shoot the nose bone up into your brain and kill you. Have you ever heard that, Vic?
Yes, I have, and I hate that.
The nose don't have a bone. Anatomy 101, guys. It's got cartilage. And there is a chance that the right guy hits the right guy with enough trauma, with a palm to the face, and he could hemorrhage in the brain. I mean, he could have brain, so he could die from the impact. That's very possible. But what's not happening is some guy with deadly registered lethal hands comes in, hits you with one dragon uppercut, palm, fist strike of fury and death, and you have some bone that shoots into your brain and kills you. None of that is true, okay? But pancreas is vile. The open palms, you can turn them into chops. You can hit with the ridge of your hand. I mean, it really does give a martial artist the opportunity to use things like chopping methods and ridge hand methods. And then, look, man, if you're in a street fight, I teach a lot of my guys, open hands.
Yes.
At least until you find out how good the guy is that you're fighting. Because if you break your hand in a fight and, you're out at the nightclub and now your right hand's broken, for something stupid, open hands are the way to go. When you see that sweet spot, you close your fist and get the job done, cash the check, and go home. But open hands are violent. Mm-hmm. Go ahead. I'm just wanting to explain exactly what kind of fight is taking place, because it was not a sanctioned MMA fight. It was this guy wouldn't quit riding Vic online, trying to what I think it is? I think, you're a lot bigger than he was. I don't mean size of the person. I mean, your reputation was bigger than him. Your career was more elaborate than him. Everybody knows you. In the business, you respect. I mean, How many titles do you have for how many companies right now, Vic?
Right now, I only have 5. I just dropped one, so I have 5.
Only 5, Vic? Oh, man.
Only 5.
Man. Yeah, you're slipping, bro. No, but seriously, 5 different companies have him as a champion, and it's a good example of what happens when you get a good wrestler that knows how to sell a product. Because if you're not a super fan of how this works, the champion becomes the face of the company. The company always puts stock into the person that is champion. That's why, Hulk Hogan was the face of WWF for a long time.
Uh-huh.
And, you see how they're treated. But Vic was a much higher career. So I felt like this guy was trying to create a glory moment where if I can just get Vic and, hit him with a lucky punch, and even if I can't, maybe I can get him down and get him in some armbar I've seen on YouTube. Completely rolling the dice here. But hey, listen, I'll be honest. I like that. That dude I was entertained because I'm talking to you on the way up to the fight. I'm like, look, man, if this guy's going to fight you, come do some training with me. We'll get you ready for some open hand techniques because, Pancras is there. And Vic is so humble and nice. He just tells the guy, yeah, I'll see you then. The other guy's running his mouth. Vic's like, oh, yeah, no, we're going to hit each other. Are you sure you want to do this? I remember you gave him 2 or 3 outs. And then I'm talking to you on the way up. Vic goes up there. Do you want to say anything else before the rest of it?
Well, real quick, he showed up late. Let's start off there. He showed up late with no equipment. He had no gloves, no mouthpiece, no nothing. And I told him, I said, yo, we're really hitting each other, right? He was like, yeah. So where's your stuff? Where's your mouthpiece? He's like, oh, I don't have none of that. I told him to tell his wife, because she was there with him. I said, there is a Walmart not too far from here. I suggest you send her to go get you a mouthpiece. Just go get you the top one, the half mouthpiece, not the full one. Because if you get the full one, you don't have time to mold it to your mouth. If you get the full one, you're gonna lose some teeth. So get the half one so you can be able to breathe. Get you some gloves. In fact, don't even worry about it. I got an extra pair of gloves. And get you some wraps because this is really happening today. And so his wife went to the store and got the stuff. And then, go ahead, Byron.
Okay, so I'm talking to Vic, and at this moment in time, I have plans for Victor. We're going to set him up a different fight because COVID hasn't come by and ruined all our plans yet. So I'm telling Vic, like, look, man, this guy seems like he's a dirty player. He doesn't strike me as a guy that's going to have honor and integrity. Look how he handles himself online. He's got a reputation for being an asshole. Maybe that's a character. Maybe he's a heel. Maybe, he wants to carry that persona. But regardless, when someone's really attacking you, so here I am worried about Vic. And Vic's like, Byron, I got this. Don't worry. I'm like, all right. So I'm, something like, look, man, just if he eye gouges you or something, so I'm just telling, because listen, I ran the underground for a while, right? And I've done a lot of underground fights in the history of what I've done. There's video upon video of us fighting in nightclubs and in beaches and just crazy places. And there's no referee and there's no commission to fine you. People do some dirty shit, right? I mean, you get people that try to eye gouge or bite you or, so I'm giving Vic the whole, hey, brother, people suck. And if he starts to lose, don't be surprised if he tries to grab your nuts and twist them or something because, that happens, right?
Right.
So, dude, do you have that fight still?
Yes, I do. It is on my YouTube.
You can post that fight in the comments on this podcast. Find the link and post it because, dude, he goes down. Victor, nice and humble and kind, comes out. He's like, yeah, just looking like a professional. You don't even think it's a fight. You think like Victor's coming out there and waiting for the wrestler to appear because he's just so calm. But, anyone that's done real fighting knows you don't want to waste your energy. You see some guy in the locker room banging his head off the lockers. I'm going to kill. They gassed out in the first round. You know what I mean?
Uh-huh.
You keep yourself composed because I don't want to waste a drop of my energy unless it's on the person I'm fighting that night. So Vic comes out composed, and I'm like, oh, yeah, he's going to bust this dude up. So out comes this other guy. He was bigger than you, a substantial amount. I mean, it wouldn't have been a sanctioned fight. He was definitely a weight class above you, and probably maybe even two. But he was a jacked up dude, and he was buff, and he looked like some crazy redneck guy that's probably hits himself in the face for fun, because he had an image to him that made him look like, I don't even know who I could compare him to, but he had that. You remember Nails from WWF?
Yes.
The con, the one that had like the jumpsuit on from prison.
Yes.
He kind of reminded me of him. Not it's just weird the way he was. But anyway, so he comes out and the fight starts. And dude, it was so beautiful. It was so satisfying. Because Vic just goes pop, 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 pop. And the dude gets hit and Vic gives him room. And then finally it turns into this, someone wants to take someone down. And Vic, dude, anyone that watches this video, the one thing I remember was that at the end, when the fight was closing down and you're like, oh yeah, Victor's got his teeth and claws in him, he's about to eat, right? You see Victor take his back and fall back with a rear naked choke. I thought he was going to break both of the dude's legs. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yes.
It was so violent. It was like go F yourself in Morse code. And he felt it, Dude, the way you latched on, he didn't just fall back. Like, Vic jumped in the air almost and pulled this guy to where both of his knees bent. And again, this is all legal. He asked for it. You want to fight? So Victor puts his ass straight to rest. Pretty sure the Undertaker sat up somewhere wherever he was. This dude was done, bro. There was put a fork in him, it's over. And Victor gets up all nice, concerned, checking on the guy to make sure he's okay. Like, you all right, buddy? Yeah, you did. Vic's over there. You did a good job. Touch you. Yeah, you did good. So here's Vic again. Nice guy, humble guy, worried about this other dude's feelings. And when Vic's heading home, I'm like, don't forget to call me on your way home. I'm going to be sitting here wondering what happened. Because I didn't get to see a video of it at this point because, they're filming it. And so Vic calls me. He's like, yeah, it's done. I'm like, what happened? He goes, you know what happened. Like, well, tell me, man. He goes, well, he came at me, so, I just choked him out. You have a video? He's like, yeah, you said you wanted one. I'm like, yeah, give me a video, bro. And when I watched that video, I called Vic the next day because he sent it to me after he got home. I called Vic the next day. I'm like, yo, there's got to be a name for that. That back take the weight. Because he was such an idiot, right? Like, he's on his knees trying to. Vic grabs him from behind. You just put that video up so I don't sound like a retard.
I got you.
People understand. I've seen a 2,000 rear naked chokes in my life. One of my favorite moves. I've done it a ton. But that one you took was like something special, bro. It looked like it was bad. I think that's illegal in like certain stage grappling tournaments because it was so bad it looked like it bent both of his knees in half. And yeah, it was good stuff. But anyways, then this guy decides now, after all the shit talking, after all the running his mouth and all the hyping it up and all the trying to use Vic to get himself a reputation and name and beat your ass and all that stuff, Victor wipes his ass with the guy. I mean, for a looser term, Vic just rips this guy's ass up. There was never a fight. It was Victor exposing the fact that this guy had no technique. Everything that guy did was answered. He had to feel like an idiot, and then Vic made him quit because there's no discrepancy on that one. And here's Victor again, helping the guy put a Band-Aid on his self-esteem. Oh, you did a good job, And then he's like encouraging the guy. And I'm thinking to myself, it takes a certain kind of person to let people shit all over you and then bust their ass and carry them so that they have some kind of something, and don't smash him as hard as you could. Because I know Victor, and he didn't have to choke him. He could have rolled him over and just beat on his face at will. There was this within 10 seconds of that fight, you knew that Victor's technique was far, far above this guy. But Vic was real nice, and he put him away, and then he's over there, So if you don't know that about Vic, now y'all know. He's a nice guy, he's humble, and he will whoop some ass. You have my word on it. all the fighters that I've ever had that are legitimate, that knew Vic and worked with Vic, Vic's the real deal. However, all you fans are lucky enough that he does this professional wrestling shit, because I know I'm a big fan of wrestling myself, and for a long time, I wanted to promote some professional wrestling. And I talked to Vic about it. And this is pre-COVID, when everything was hot and we were pumping shows out nonstop, and before all the weird rules and regulations, and now North Carolina changed a bunch of laws, and the venues changed their laws. So we're reacclimating ourselves to the new situation. But I talked to Vic. I said, look, man, if we all don't die of COVID, I said, I'd like to pick up where we left off. So I hit Vic up a while ago. I said, hey, man, listen, I want to pick up where we left off, because there's a guy in my area, right? I think he's in the Smithfield area, but Selma area, out in North Carolina. His name's Dan Wright. He runs Dominant Championship Wrestling, DCW.
Well, he used to. He used to. Now he runs Southern Xtreme Wrestling Association.
Oh, yeah. Well, Dan's been in the business a long time. And he's a promoter. I've known Dan, probably since I've moved here. We were friends outside of the wrestling thing, because he had a shop with his brother, and I would order T-shirts and stuff for my fighters, and they would produce them for me. And after a while, I got to know Dan, and boy, I'll tell you what, I always have been a wrestling fan. I'm kind of the guy that I love the stuff that you don't see a lot of. If you told people that The Undertaker's name was Mean Mark Callis, most people would look at you weird. And you mean Taker? Yeah, I mean Taker, bro. So I was really into it since I was a kid, following the storyline, all the backstage, all the drama on the airplanes and the hotels, and that show Beyond the Mat.
Yes.
That kind of stuff. I love that stuff. Watching Mick Foley's career and the damage he endured and the crazy stuff that they do to build the business was absolutely inspiring on any level. And then, of course, I was a Razor Ramon boy. One of my favorite matches ever was Razor Ramon versus Shawn Michaels ladder match.
Uh-huh.
Also a Shawn Michaels fan, too. I feel like he paved the way for little dudes to get in a world of muscle-bound monsters, and he held it down. And I've watched wrestling grow and become amazing. Towards the end, I was a WCW fan. I just felt like WWF at the time was still playing angles that were unbelievable. Like the dead man was still dead. And, Doink the Clown. Certain things just didn't. The WCW felt raw, where the big boys play. And then you have the Monday Night Wars. I love WCW. I got into ECW because Rob Van Dam, Sabu, their matches were so damn good. And then Jerry Lynn. And, some people aren't going to be real apt to know all this unless they're a real fan. So I realized, but shit, I'm a real wrestling fan. I love this shit. So after I'm here, I'm talking to Dan. Dan has a company, does the best shows I've seen out here. Because the idea is we're going to start promoting some shows. Mm-hmm. I was talking to Vic about it, and I said, look, man, if I ever decided to do some wrestling promotion, I'd want to have someone with me that knows the business better than me. If you go into MMA, it's different because I kind of built it. I built all of it. And things grow and things change, but the MMA world is a very small world. It's not that it's small, it's that there's only one way to get acknowledgement, and you got to produce violence at a high level, and my shows, people love them. I know how to, I have a good production. I know how to, I do my own videos. I really care about the image of the guys that are fighting, and I really cared about the fighters. I genuinely see all these guys as some of them are like my children, some of them are like my brother, and everyone else is just family, like the majority of them. We also raised foster kids for a long time. So these fighters would inspire foster kids. So we'd have a foster kid we were raising, and I'd do an MMA show, and I'd raise money, and we'd put it towards an orphanage. I remember a couple times we bought Christmas gifts for all the kids. And at this time, there weren't a lot of people doing that. They had an angel tree, but it was never Well, we'd get a bunch of fighters. They'd go out, do their fight. We'd raise money. We'd put it on the gifts. And then my fighters would get to go see these kids and with a black eye and a Santa hat on. You know what I mean? and these kids thought, this is the coolest shit ever. Like, these guys are like professional cage fighters. Because you remember back then, cage fighter was different than it is now. Right?
Yes.
They were trying to call it human cockfighting, and they were trying to say that we're bloody, vile, barbaric savages, which isn't far from the truth. But really, I think a lot of people are just bitches, in this world, and especially in the media world. Those guys haven't been in fights; they don't know. So I wanted to do the wrestling, so I started talking to Dan, and Dan's been in the business so long. The one thing I told myself, and Vic's heard me say this, everybody else has, I have no problem going head to head against other businesses. None. Zero. I love it. Let's do this. This is what it's what I've done for all these years. I love competition. It's just what I've done. I enjoy it. It's like a euphoric adrenaline rush, and then when you're in the middle of the show and everything's on the line, and I love it so much. It was so good. I'm getting a little bit older. I'm 44 for all you people that don't know, but I still move like I'm not. However, the one thing I didn't want to do is step on Dan's toes. I'm like, okay, if I do a promotion of wrestling, I'm going to want to make it big, but I don't ever want to cross Dan, because Dan has been a good friend to me. I know his story. I know his brother. I know his mom. I know his dad. I used to hang out at his shop when I was bored, and Dan has always been straight up, and he loves the business. I have not met anyone in North Carolina that loves wrestling more than Dan. And that dude is so knowledgeable. It's hard to think you're a fan in the same room as him, right?
Right.
The dude knows everything. And he knows everybody. Like, he's that dude that, like, legitimately can pick up the phone and call anybody. He's got everybody's number. Everybody loves Dan. Recently, I heard about a discrepancy that went on. I'm not going to give the details on this, Vic. You know what I'm talking about, right?
Yeah.
I don't want to put details out there, rumors out there, but there was some stuff going on. From what I understand, some underhanded stuff between some people, and some people were trying to take advantage of Dan or whatever. I heard some rumors on the street, and the rumors I heard at the time weren't true, but they sounded so bad. I called Dan. I said, "Hey, bro, I'm hearing weird rumors. Do you need someone to get your back? Like, do you have problems? Like, do you need some boys to roll up and help you?" He starts laughing. He's like, no, just the business, Byron. So after that, talking to Vic, talking to some of my other friends, talking to a lot of fighters, we have decided that we're going to do a wrestling promotion. We're going to start doing shows. Mm-hmm. And again, I went to Dan, and I said, Dan, listen, I said, I'm going to do what I want to anyway, but out of respect and out of knowing who you are and what you've done for the business, and, I wanted to get your blessing on this. And he goes, well, you don't need it. I said, well, I kind of want to get you, too. I kind of want to get you in on this, because if I have you doing this with me, I mean, I'm already at the finish line. All I got to do is put some cherries on the top. I said, we got Vic. I named a bunch of other people. I said, there's a lot of stuff that could be done. And I decided to go around and check out every wrestling promotion I could find. I went to one Vic just had recently. Where the heck was that at?
That was in Roxborough, North Carolina.
Yeah, it was like an hour and a half away or something. And then I went to one the other night, and I've been going to every wrestling match I can find. I just want to go there. I want to see the crowd. I want to see the production. I want to see what kind of promoting they're doing. I want to see, the way the guys are treated. I just wanted to go do some recon work. Like, hey, if this is what I'm going to do, I might as well go check all of it out before I launch my first show. And, I talked to you about this, Vic. You said, yeah, that's a smart idea. You get a feel. I went to a show the other night at Twister's Bar, and that's like an area where I'm at. Now, Twister's was owned by a guy named Mark. I had a nightclub called the Music Hall up in Wilson, and I would bring in Hispanic bands, like Mexican bands. And what I do is I'd pay them to some of these guys like $50,000, $80,000, like for Gerardo Ortiz or the Players or those guys. I'd bring them in, and then after I was done with them at my club, I would send them down on the same night or the next day and Mark would rent them, like buy them. So it would help me pay for the band. So you get some of these bands like $50,000. So I'd be like, hey, Mark, I got these guys coming down Saturday night. Or do you want to do a Sunday? And he's like, yeah, because Mexicans will come out Sunday and get down. You know, they're a party culture. If you get the right band, they'll be there. So I'd have 3,000 people at the club. We'd tear it up, and then I'd send them down to Mark's, and Mark would always pay the bill, never stiffed me, always treated everyone good, and we did a little business. And I tried to make sure I didn't go head-to-head with Mark. I didn't want to have a big band one night when he had a big band one night, and now all of a sudden we're splitting the crew in half. It was better to benefit him and, you know, so that we work together. That's good business. That's what that is. So I went down to this Twister thing, and I'm like, hey, it's Mark here. And they're like, well, Mark ain't here. I was like, well, can you tell him Byron's here? Can you know, I'm looking for Mark. Couldn't find him. And I see this wrestling show about to happen. Now, dude, they brought out one of the coolest wrestlers I think you could, Tommy Dreamer, the innovator of violence. You know, the ECW Singapore Cane distributor, right? The guy was awesome. I remember Tommy. He carried ECW. He was one of the top stars. He was teaming up with this other people that were good. They were fighting this Brutality Inc., which is like some local stuff, like they wrestle around here. But regardless, I'm going down to see the show, and I'm expecting they had some luchador. Do you remember who that was on that? Did you see that show? I know I didn't go, but did you know who that dude was?
The luchador was, I want to say was Sheesh.
As soon as we say it, we're going to be like, oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Dang, I always think of Ultimo Dragon or Rey Mysterio, but it wasn't who it was.
No, I think it was like Kalisto or something.
Kalisto, that's it. You're right. Yeah. Oh, yeah. I keep thinking his name reminded me of Carlito, the one that spits the apple in the face of anybody who don't speak cool. You know? So, and I'm down there, and, you know, you got his partner, which is Dan's cousin, right? And from the ECW. So you got some real names. You got some real guys that can bring real talent. C.W. Anderson was the guy that was the partner. That's also Dan Wright's cousin. And he's a diehard for wrestling. You know, the guy just like tries to give back. He's always helping the young people get further. Didn't you train with him for a while, Vic?
Yes, I trained under CW. Really good guy. We just had him on the show a couple of weeks ago. We wasn't able to keep him on there very long because bad signal. But CW is one of our greatest friends of the Best Damn Wrestling Podcast and one of my best friends in the business. So, yeah, CW is an amazing guy.
I don't know him real well. Like, I've never met him real well. Like, I think, you know, anytime I've seen him, he was getting ready to wrestle, and Dan's like, hey, there's my cousin, you know, I want you, you know. But it was, I think I'm definitely going to want to, you know, because I'm going to have him wrestling for us in the future, I'm pretty sure, you know, as long as he's willing to. But, so you had real talent. The problem was, you got this ring set up, and you walk into the place, and it smells awkward. I'm just going to say that, right? But the lighting was horrible. And then you have this ring where, Vic, listen, you couldn't have stood Doink, or you couldn't have stood Dink, the midget clown, on the top rope without him busting his head, right?
God,
So
dog.
I start scratching my head. I start going, wait a minute. You brought in a luchador, and he can't jump off the top. He can't do no, like, springboard, catapult crap off the ropes. Like, if you stepped on the ring and reached up and just swung your arm, you'd hit a metal beam. And I'm thinking, this has to be a joke. This cannot be real. Then they're charging $30 a ticket, and I'm like, this is going to be a shit show. You know, like, how can you bring these guys out? ECW legends, right? I'm not overstating that. ECW legends. CW has been around, and Tommy Dreamer is one of the best that you can imagine. When you think of ECW, certain names come to mind: Sandman, Sabu, Taz. You know, a lot of these guys, they came out of that area, but Tommy Dreamer was always in there getting it done. And C.W. Anderson, you know, he's a vet. He's been in and out of the ring with the best. And Tommy's the same thing. And so I'm thinking to myself, all right, this makes sense. They're going to hit each other with chairs, Eventually, they're going to get a hold of some beer bottles, and they're just going to stab each other until there's blood everywhere. Like, that makes sense, right? Because it would have took that. I'm serious. It would have took that to get production value out of them. Now, listen, if Tommy Dreamer comes in, C.W. Anderson, and they just wave to the camera, there's value in that. These guys are iconic, wrestlers from the past. They're legendary status. I loved Tommy Dreamer. I thought Tommy was, you remember, he's the one that pretty much came up with the Singapore Cane match. I remember him fighting the Sandman and some other guys, and just back in the day when ECW was going hard, dude, it was hard. Mm-hmm. I loved it. Like, they were so crazy, and their crowd was crazy. Their fan base was insane. Some of the chants I'm not even going to say on your podcast, right? But they got down to the ground with the clown. Like, there's no joke. It was always brutal. You always thought someone was, he's dead. He's dead. Holy shit, he's moving. I thought he'd be dead. Like, they did crazy shit. Uh-huh. So I'm thinking, how do you do that, Vic? Am I the only one? I got to ask you. Okay, let's say this. I'm going to bring in Tommy Dreamer and C.W. Anderson, right? I'm going to put him in a ring where you can't even jump. On the, like, not off the turnbuckle, in the middle of the ring, if you jump, you're going to hit your head. Like, the corner, the top rope was like 2.5, 3 feet from the ceiling, like from the metal beams. Uh-huh. Is it just me, or is that unacceptably retarded?
I mean, I've been on some shows, and yeah, it's ridiculous to see that there are actually companies that will have a ring or have a venue where the ceiling is so low that when you stepped in the ring, you literally are going to, like, you can reach your hand up and touch the ceiling. Like, it never makes sense. I've been on some shows where they had like low boys, the low boy rings where you could have, the ability to be able to step on the top rope or whatever. But still, it's only going to go, it's only going to go, but so much depending on how tall you are.
Right. Well, let me ask you this. Luchadors are known for what? When you go to a luchador event, like Lucha Underground and stuff, in my experience, correct me if I'm wrong, these dudes are bouncing, jumping, flying through the air. These guys are known, like, they got frequent flyer miles on that ass, right?
Right.
Is it just me, or is that, like, that's their traditional appeal?
No, that's right. That's right.
Yeah, so we bring it, it's like bringing in Rey Mysterio and then saying, just